right, we are live. Okay, YouTube land, welcome to the show. We are just about to get started. I have Don Goewey here. We were just chit-chatting, almost lost track of time. But as you know, we always start YouTube first. Get a little bit of casual hello. Say hello, Don.
Hello.
And then we're going to fire up the audio only, the iTunes side of things, so that way the podcast people can catch up here. For those that aren't sophisticated enough to watch us live on YouTube. So stay tuned, be ready, and we're about to get started now. All right, welcome to the Money Lab Live Podcast, episode number 74, The Fear of Money, Money Story. All right, welcome back to another live broadcast of the Money Lab podcast from the Six Figure Academy. I am your host, Wei Hong from the Six Figure Academy. Now, this is the podcast where we give you tips, strategies, and interviews with other entrepreneurs on how to create that ultimate six-figure entrepreneurial lifestyle, free of bad money stories, or in today's case, stress, money anxiety, stress, and so that you can monetize your dreams and execute your genius. Now, if you haven't already downloaded our free ebook from Money Anxiety to Six-Figure Mastery, make sure you go to go.thesixfigureacademy.com and get it there. It's the perfect complement to all the things that we discuss on the show with our guests, and quite frankly, it could change your life. Now, if you are joining us live today and you are not on YouTube Live to see our beautiful faces designed for radio, make sure you get on Spreaker.com and download the Spreaker app on your mobile device and search for the hashtag #TheMoneyLab so that you can join us in the chat room and ask us questions, interact with us and our guests, or even request a specific topic to discuss that will help support you in your quest for that ideal six-figure lifestyle. Now, while you're there, subscribe so that you don't miss an episode and you can catch us every week. For all other ways to find us, go to thesixfigureacademy.com/radio for all the details. And if there's something you love about what you hear on this episode today that you know could help someone you could care about, remember, sharing is caring. Share this show to that person. Now, I'm really excited about the guest we have today. I was introduced by a really good friend of mine, and I was absolutely blown away when I got a chance to look into his background, his journey to how he got to where he got today. And what I want to make sure that you pay attention to, not just to his unique money story, but his approach through his life journey and what he's been able to do to eliminate stress in people's lives. And I'll tell you right now, if you don't know, if you can say to me right now that I've never had stress, then I know you're lying, because everybody has to do it. So really want to pay attention today to how he does that with people. So a little bit about my guest today. Our guest today is Don Goewey. He's the president of Pro Attitude, and he specializes, it's a human performance firm, and you guys all know how I love human performance, with the mission of ending stress and elevating the experience of work in corporate America. Think about that. For those of you who are listening, who are working in corporate America and have to deal with stress on a daily basis, you have to tune in on this. And even when we're done, listen to it again, because I guarantee we're going to be talking about a lot of things that will absolutely turn your life around. He's also the author of the Amazon bestseller called The End of Stress: 4 Steps to Rewiring Your Brain. And then previously, Don actually managed Stanford's department, where I was born, Stanford Hospital, Stanford Department of Psychiatry, directed a regional paramedic emergency system, and headed ICAH, an institute that pioneered a psycho-spiritual approach to overcoming catastrophic life events. Okay, for those of you who don't know what Stanford is, anything that happens there is awesome. My dad came from there. That's his alma mater. Got his PhD, all that cool stuff. The Institute received the Excellence in Medicine Award by the American Medical Association. So we've got an amazing guest today. Don, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on. Really excited about what we get to talk about today.
Oh, thank you. I'm excited about it too.
I know. We were just talking before the show came on, just to make sure all the tech was working and everything. And we started getting carried away. And there's so many things that we talked about before the show off air that I was like, oh my God, that was such juicy things. So I'm really looking forward to today. But, in the light of the money lab being, talking about people's money story and everything, everybody has their money story, stress related, obviously, which is right up your alley. So let's get that out of the way first, because everybody has their money story, especially as an entrepreneur. I think it's so cool to be able to kind of share what you had to resolve and overcome in terms of bad money stories, and then to be able to create the success that you have today. So, the title of the show today was Fear of Money. And so let's talk about what that has to do with your money story that you had to grow up with and you had to overcome to create success in your business.
Yeah, well, I grew up in the era when the Summer of Love, when the hippies were
Woodstock,
Woodstock, and really, for that generation really challenged the whole capitalistic value system that your worth was based on how much money you made,
right?
And so they got part of that's correct, but the whole story about that is not correct at all. And then I grew up. My father came back from World War II. With real severe post-traumatic stress, which they hadn't diagnosed, hadn't understood at that point.
Wow.
And he abandoned the family when I was 5 years old. And we went from being, middle class to being poor.
Wow.
I remember we moved from a really lovely home to across the tracks. There was a dirt road out in front of the house and a dirt road for our driveway. And my mother would seem like she was always working, and I was in daycare facilities. And then my mother married about 5 years later to a man who was on his way up. He was in the automobile.
Cool.
He sold cars. He was a great car salesman, bought his own dealerships. And we began to move up the ladder and ended up living in Atherton. And for people who don't know what Atherton, it's one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in the San Francisco Bay Area.
I dated a girl that lived in Atherton.
Did you? There you go. I probably knew her. And at any rate, that home life with my stepfather was anything but happy. He was a brutal man. He resented my brothers and I. He stepped in and married a woman with 4 children. And so
he knew that going in, though.
He knew that going in. I wish he would have figured it out earlier on. I much preferred the living across the tracks with my mom where everything was peaceful than to being worried about when he was going to fly off the handle. And so I watched him go up the success ladder, and I watched how people really admired him for his business acumen, for the great deals he made and all that kind of thing. And yet I knew another story about him. And so what I began to get wired for is that this upward mobile thing into money, into success is a lie. It's a hypocrisy. And I just, when you're in pain, you believe what all the fearful thoughts you're thinking, you believe they're true because there's so much emotion attached to them. It feels like true. And then, his business began to fall apart. And when I was about 18 years old, just finishing up high school, his business went into foreclosure. They foreclosed on the house, and suddenly my family was back to zero again. And I helped my mother get through that. She couldn't bear to answer the telephone when all of the bill collectors calling and people were coming in and hauling off her furniture that she spent her whole life. I mean, it was very painful. So I walked away at 18 after all of that and thought money is about the worst thing on the planet. I'm staying clear of it. And I did stay clear of it. I always managed to keep the wolves away from the door, but not much more than that until I ended up at Stanford. And I had a big wake up when I was at Stanford, with a department of, at first I started out there in a department of medicine. And the chairman of the department and I was like the chief operating officer, and the chairman of the department is the scientist, the medical man. He and I did not see eye to eye on how the department should be run. And I was kind of a young Turk in those days, and I think about 2 years of me bumping up against him was enough for him, and he fired me. And suddenly I had risen up on the career ladder to this wonderful job, and I had 4 children at the time.
Oh, wow.
Suddenly I'm out of work, and 9 days later I was diagnosed with a brain tumor.
Oh.
And the doctors told me that I was probably never going to be able to work again, that the damage that the tumor probably will have done would be exacerbated by the surgery itself. Because the laser the tumor out, and if the tumor was a consistency, it would explode. It would create all this collateral damage to other neurocircuits around it, which was getting in and around the language area, the temporal lobes. And so I fell into a state of abject fear. I thought that my family and I were doomed. We were going to end up poorer than my mother ever was. We'd be living on the street. That I would have failed my family horribly. And the surgeon I found couldn't do the surgery for 6 weeks since it was slow growing tumor. Right. That was okay. But what I didn't bargain for is sitting around waiting for brain surgery is stressful. Yeah. Your mind begins to ruminate on all the bad things that can happen. And about 2 weeks into that, I woke up in the middle of the night and went and stared out into the cold, dark night, and I had to challenge myself, which was worse, all that abject fear that I was suffering under for the last two weeks, or what might happen in the future. That was somewhere around a 25% chance it was going to be bad, you know? And I decided the fear was worse because it's what was happening to me all the time. And I decided that I was going to really exercise being at peace. And I couldn't, as I sat there, I thought, how do I get to that place of being at peace in the middle of this? And the answer that came through is by not being afraid. Peace, by definition, is the opposite of being afraid. And so I began to challenge the stories I was telling myself. You know, they all boiled down to my family's doomed. Right. And I knew enough about psychology that all the emotions that we experience, they derive from thoughts that we believe. If we don't believe we're doomed, if we can have that thought and we don't believe it, it doesn't turn into fear. It doesn't turn into stress. It just passes like a cloud. Right. But when you believe it, it turns into an emotional state that then makes you feel convinced that it must be true because how could I be this upset? You know? And I knew that that's a pattern that we run through. And so what I would do is I would say to myself, I would get into my story of gloom and doom and say, but what if that's not true? What if I don't believe?
It's like challenging your stories, basically.
Like challenging them, basically not changing them, but by stop believing them. I just said, what does my experience become? Because that's what I wanted to change. Right. I wanted to change that experience from fear into a more expansive feeling, which is peace and love. And so I challenged it. I go, what's my experience become when I don't believe I'm doomed? And when I could get across the river from, in terms of that exercise, I would arrive at a place where I felt relief. And I began to realize that the relief I was experiencing was basically from a thought. I relieved myself from believing this thought. And then as I relaxed into that relief, just, took a breath into it, I felt my whole mental experience changed from contraction, from like the walls closing in on me to expansion. And then what began to happen is the idea of a possibility, of a different possibility began to emerge in my mind. And out of that, as I relaxed into that, I began to feel a sense of optimism. Maybe I can turn this in a direction where I want to take it. And then I began to notice that my vibration, which was very shut down, began to open up. It began to open up and allow me to feel better about myself, to feel happy. And so I decided when I went back to work, I had to go back to work for 4 weeks to finish a project to get my severance package, to get a sweetened severance package. So I had to go back in. And as I went back to work, I began to notice that as I let go of fear and chose to be peaceful and open, that my perception of the whole place changed.
Right.
The people who I thought were my enemy, my boss, who I thought was unreasonable, I began to realize, that's just my perception. Right. And it's a perception that if I stay, it's going to give me a headache, and I need to give my head
give you a tumor, like Arnold Schwarzenegger in Kindergarten Cop. It is not a tumor; it's something else.
It's me. It's my thought process, and I spent those 4 weeks stress free, and I had fearful thoughts, but during that entire time, I didn't indulge one of them. I let them all go.
Like passing clouds in the sky. You just kind of
exactly.
That's
just let them pass,
right.
And came back to and exercised the power to choose my own attitude towards what was going on. And I went through this surgery, and it was a complete success. I'm not disabled.
And not just because of the ability of the surgeon, but I think also because of how you prepped yourself going in, I think, right? In terms of recovery and everything. Yeah. And I love what you use. I mean, now you use the word vibration, and I'm always curious as to how that's defined in everybody's, world, because everybody uses vibration and frequency in a different way. There's a scientific and there's an esoteric. And they're both kind of one and the same. They're just using different words. How would you describe that vibration for those that are curious? What does he mean by vibration? My vibration changed. My vibration shifted.
Well, the simplest way to think of it, there are a lot of people who use that word, and it gets thrown around a lot. But
rather haphazardly sometimes, I think.
Yeah, exactly. but I mean, in the best way of trying to understand something that can set you free, because your vibration can set you free, is to try to understand it in the simplest terms. And the simplest terms is that if you think of yourself as fearful, and then you try to map that to, well, what's my vibration? And if you understand what your vibration is, it's one of contraction. It's, in other words, it's a feeling of resistance that's beginning to compress you. And as you know, the more fearful, the more stressed you get, the more compressed you feel.
Right.
And then what happens to you mentally is that your mind narrows.
Right.
All you can see is what you're afraid of. You don't see any other possibility. Your brain gets really locked into that, and then you get locked into survival mode.
Right.
And then you begin to have this experience called shutdown, emotional shutdown. And if you're really stressed and really afraid, someone who loves you may have difficulty even reaching you emotionally, because you've pulled in that far. Well, so I ask people, imagine what your vibration would be when it's pretty low. You're going to be vibrating at pretty low frequency if you would put it into the terms of physics.
Right. So, like, if we look at terms of physics, because me, my background in engineering and stuff like that. When something is actually vibrating, people know what things vibrate look like. There's like large vibrations and there's small vibrations. And I think what you're saying is that if someone is pulling this and they're vibrating at a lower frequency, in other words, there's less perception in terms of what things are vibrating. So people have a harder time calibrating on what the heck you're vibrating, or even what's going on with you, right? They can't get through. They can't perceive what the vibration actually is of your natural.
And when it's that low of a vibration based on fear, they lose their sense of connection. They lose the sense of connection to all that is. They lose their sense of connection to just you and me right here.
Right.
And so what ends up happening is, when you see somebody who's really stressed and shut down and you don't know, you don't generally want to rush into them. You sort of back off from them.
Right.
Well, if the opposite of that is expansion. Opposite of contraction is expansion.
Right.
And so when you think of letting go of fear, and as you let it go of fear, you become more relaxed. As you become calmer and more relaxed, and you let go to that, you become more peaceful. As you become more peaceful, you light up more of the higher order brain function in the prefrontal cortex. Also, all of that neurology that's up there in the higher part of your brain also maps down into your heart and into your gut. The research is finding those connections all over the place. As you expand, those come online. Right. You begin to sense the world around you, feel more connected with the world around you, be able to communicate it with it more intelligently.
Right.
And that as you expand into that way, your intuition comes on, And then this incredible thing happens, which they're doing a great deal of research at Northwestern University, finding that as you move into that state, you open up to insight, to creative insight. And it's sort of like, if you can imagine you're in a boardroom, and there's two guys, and they're narrowly trying to solve a problem, and they're both stressed out. And then suddenly what comes into the boardroom is all the creative people, all the marketing people, all of the smartest engineers, and they're all around the table. And suddenly a brainstorming happens, and they have this aha, that's the solution. Well, that happens in your brain when you've calmed down enough for alpha waves to kick into what's called gamma wave. And now you're seeing, you're getting an insight in which all the pieces of the puzzle fit, all the dots connect.
So alpha wave is like
expanded vibration.
Right. So the alpha wave is higher. It's because people like do.
Alpha wave is lower. Relax.
I mean, I'm sorry. Yeah. Gamma wave is higher. Right. And then so like delta and theta, that's when you go deep into the unconscious, right? And the gamma is like higher level of awareness.
And that's why you have some of your best insights when you're taking a hot shower, because you're in an alpha state. And what happens is that everything in your brain goes on pause. Your brain kind of opens up for a second, and suddenly all of that other genius is going on in your brain, other parts of your brain come in together, and they're all at the table with you at that moment. Whereas when you're intellectually, analytically trying to solve a problem, or you're afraid, which has narrowed you, you only get a small piece of things. So that's what you just think of yourself when somebody's loving, when somebody's peaceful, when somebody's excited, enthusiastic. Well, their energy's expansive. Their vibration is a higher vibration. And how do we feel about those people? Well, we're attracted to them. We want to be close to them. Well, it turns out that it's not only true about people, it's true about what you want to attract into your life. It operates off of this very same principle. And the more contracted you are, the less you repel the stuff that you really want, the success and happiness and monetary advancement that you want in your life. You push it away. Because you also push away the brain function that will get you there, the intelligence that will get you there.
So to wrap up the money story piece, at what point did you realize that bad money story had to shift and change in order for your financial circumstance to change, for all that to turn around? Yeah,
it was exactly like that. It was kind of global. I began to realize I need to look at everything differently. Not only look at my boss differently, I need to look at the whole world differently. And then, when I got out of the surgery, I got a call from the dean's office asking me to come back to work. I got my job back on top of it. And part of the reason I got my job back is that that's when I went to psychiatry, and the head of psychiatry said, anybody that could go through what you went through with the attitude that you showed during those 4 weeks when you were basically wrapping things up here, that's such a good attitude. I want that attitude in my department.
Nice. So in a way, that brain tumor was the physical manifest of a bad money story and a bunch of other stories. It was just like
and they're all the same. They're all the same story. They're all the same story. They're all the story that you're not good enough. That you're not strong enough, that you'll never be rich enough. And most of it, when you work with people and you kind of deconstruct what's at the bottom of all the stories that they're telling themselves, you usually land up in their family of origin, and the pain that they learn there, the mindset that they learn there, and that's what they're trying to break free of. And yet they don't map it back that far, but you have to go back that far. And it doesn't mean you have to lay on a couch with Sigmund Freud. No. You have to just open yourself up to your emotions, to the way you think, to how those thoughts turn into beliefs, and what those beliefs are bringing into your life, and to ask yourself, do you want that? And the answer to me when it came to money is no. I don't want to just get by anymore.
Exactly.
I want to do better than that, because of all the opportunities that it would create, not only for me, but for my children, for my family.
And for the people that you can help. The more successful financially you are, you can help more people, which is what you're doing now, right?
Yes. And the chief alignment that I made to change my whole relationship with money was when I had recovered from the brain tumor, I was clear about what I loved, which was helping people. And that the job that I had at Stanford wouldn't ultimately get me as far down the road in the work I wanted to do with people. And so I took a leap of faith and I left Stanford. And what ended up lining up for me, a lot of things got worked out when I began to have faith in my capacity to actually create a life, a career out of what I love to do. And one of them was writing. Wow. The other was working with people. And the money just kind of followed.
Nice. Yeah. You know, because you were passionate about it.
And there's no higher vibration than love.
Right? And as long as you commit to that path, right?
Yes,
I think the big thing is because you've made a full commitment to that path. I think one of the challenges that people have when they talk about, well, I'm pursuing my passion and money's not coming. And I think there's a part of them that has yet to fully commit to that passion, to that authentic path that they're here to do. And I think that's the big disparity between people who say, well, I am passionate about what I do. Is but have you fully committed to that passion?
Yes.
You know, 1 foot on the dock, 1 foot on the boat, what's going on type of thing.
Right.
Here's a question that I have for you, because a lot of us, me included, how we made that big change to our money story and to our life, it almost required a catharsis. You with your brain tumor, me putting a gun to my head, all these different things that happen. And there's that bottom moment where we're just like, oh, something's got to change. And I think part of why people like you and I do the work we do is like, how do we get people to not have to hit that bottom point? Not to hit that catharsis where you're like in a life and death scenario where like, oh my God, if I don't do something, something has to change. How do you think that, and I asked this of a few people who are, do the kind of work that you do. It's like, how do we get people to do that? Because I'm sure that's part of why you want to do what you do, so people don't have to go there. People don't have to hit that catharsis, right?
Well, the thing is that I agree. You don't have to get a brain tumor. Unless you're as stubborn as I was. Unless you were, right? And I was programmed into anger and being a victim, And when I look back on the family life I came out of, it's understandable why somebody would come out that angry, right, that victimized, right, and all of that. But then it eventually reaches a point, where that story doesn't work anymore, because if you're going to stay in that story, you're going to stay in all the limitations that it's going to bring to your life. And the ultimate limitation is you're always going to be afraid. Right. You're always going to feel like you're not good enough. And so the real moment of catharsis that everybody has, whether they, a gun to the head or a brain tumor, is there's something here that has to change, and then the realization that it's me that has to change. What needs working on is me.
Right.
And that's where I need to go first, and then to have a support system, a coach, a therapist, a family member, a mentor,
right,
who guides you through making that change in the most positive way.
Right.
Not in a way in which increases your shame and sense of guilt, but releases you from it.
Which we see happen.
Yes.
In the world, in our space, even.
Yes. People
get shamed into like making the change, and that's just, it just blows my mind how that even happens.
There is not one shred of scientific evidence that is ever found that shame ever improved a person.
Right.
Improved their psychological, not one shred.
Yeah.
And people have looked for it because, when people a manager uses shame and fear, right, and guilt to motivate his people, he's going in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
And so if you can get a mentor who allows you to cry the tears you have to cry, yell the yell you've got to yell, express the pain that you have to express as you begin to move to higher ground, as you begin to open up to your experience, right, to who you are, and then begin to envision where it is you want to go as you make that shift from, looking in the rearview mirror to looking in front of you,
right. And when you made that leap, was it scary at all? I mean, I'm sure, going through a lifetime and having gone through what you've gone through, and just knowing that of one type of way of working which was working at Stanford, working for somebody else, and then
Yes.
taking that leap of faith, so to speak, which wasn't the first leap of faith I'm sure you've taken, but taking that
No.
leap of faith into entrepreneurship.
Probably not the last either. Yes, it was. It was scary. You know, when I decided to leave Stanford,
Yeah.
I had, I guess you would call it a spiritual experience. I've never had one before or since. I'm sitting at a table with all the division chiefs in our department and the chairman of the department, and we were going over the agenda, and everybody was kind of nattering at each other and kind of intellectually putting each other down, and it was always that kind of atmosphere, it seemed to me.
Right.
And I was getting discouraged, like, what am I doing here? And I heard this voice in the room say, if you don't get up, go to your office and resign this position, 20 years will come and go, and you'll still be here. But the path you came to walk may not still be here.
Right.
And I actually looked around the room to see who had said that. And there was nobody that said that, you know, and I'd heard it just like you and I.
Yeah. Did you guys hear that?
Did you hear that?
It's like he had a moment of lunacy, and he's like, "I'm out of here."
I'm out of here. You know what? I should have asked her, and I said, "Did you just fire me?" But I went to my office. I got up I excused myself. I went to my office, and I sat with that. And I thought, you know, this is too big a decision. I'll go home, I'll sleep on it. And then it hit me like, well, what if tomorrow I wake up and it is 20 years from now? Because, you know, you go, sometimes a big decision and you go home and you sleep on it and you
never wake up for the next.
You never wake up. This is a wake up call. It may not come again. So I did it.
I wonder
and
how
I thought when I went out into the world, since I had heard whatever, you know, the universe speak to me.
Right.
There must be a real soft landing pad here for me, and there wasn't.
Oh.
I ran out of money. When I ran out of money, I was back to like, what am I going to do? And then I had to really begin. I realized, like, you know what? We're back in fear again. We pulled ourselves. We thought we got past that. You never get past fear. You never get past the ego. You never get past stress. But you're always available to you is your ability to choose your own way, to choose your own attitude as you face whatever situation you had to face. So I got up and went out and found a job working in a factory that made shampoo, putting shampoo in bottles and capping them and making a little bit of money.
Oh, cool. And
then I found, and working with these women, with a group, I was the only guy on the assembly line. And
that's nice.
really love these women. Really, they taught me a lot. They taught me a lot of common sense that I didn't have.
About women.
And then the AIDS epidemic was in full force. It was raging. And one day I found a newspaper in the lunchroom, and it had this job working within the AIDS epidemic. And I went and applied. They hired me, and I realized this is where I want to be. I want to be helping people.
Right.
In these situations, in these really difficult situations. And it turned out to be just a whole change of career that was really wonderful for me. It was, always working with people for me it's a student-teacher relationship in which it changes. One minute, I'm the teacher. I've got wisdom about this particular situation. The next minute, the person who I'm coaching is actually telling me something, and I'm going like, I need to listen to this. This is something I need to.
Right.
It's an exchange, and it came to be what I defined as love. When two people connect and get real and honest with each other at the deepest level and support each other, that's love. And that's the highest vibration. That's the vibration I always want to be with. And my career has really blossomed.
Yeah. So from there, at what point did you decide, okay, now I'm going to go back to being an entrepreneur again? And then what was the form that it took at that point, when you made that shift?
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. I've never thought of it that way, but that actually did happen. Yeah. I was working in a nonprofit.
Right.
And that was ICAH. And, we were doing incredible things. They sent us, the Clinton's State Department sent us off into Croatia and Bosnia during that war to work with people. And so anyway, what happened is that one of the people that was instrumental in founding Charles Schwab Company had a massive heart attack and came to the center to get help and got help. And he challenged me to take what the center had done and translate it into helping people with stress in the workplace, because it almost killed him. And he funded a think tank with scientists and businessmen, and we developed this model and took it out, and it worked, but it didn't. But we couldn't leverage it inside of a nonprofit organization.
Right.
We needed a more entrepreneurial spirit, and so I found a funder who paid the center for all of the money it had out to develop it, and she and I took it out into the world. She was one of the famous winemakers up in Napa Valley who came to get grief support.
Okay.
And so we went out there, and it was like going out it was another leap of faith.
Right. Yeah. So how did you know because most people who come from, the typical 9-to-5 type of world have a hard time wrapping their head around going out and asking for people to fund something that they want to do versus creating it yourself or saving enough money so you can invest in your own business. I would love for you to kind of share a little insight how you realize to do that versus doing what most entrepreneurs do. It's like, I don't have enough money to start, so I won't start my own business.
Yeah. Well, the first thing is, first question I would have a person like that is, the business that you've started or want to start, do you love it? I mean, is it burning in your heart to make this thing succeed?
Right.
Is it bringing something out into the world that helps the world, that helps other people? And I think always what you'll get in the way of an answer is yes. I wanted to do this my whole life. I want to do it now, and it will help other people and that kind of thing. And so then I get them to feel that, to be in touch with that. And then to understand it, it's difficult to go out with handout and ask for a handout. Right. It's difficult to go out and have these VC people look at your project and go, "Oh, this is crap. Get out of here. Next one, come in."
Has that happened?
Oh, that could happen like that. But it happened to me a few times.
Oh. How did you manage that? How did you even, because that's your baby, and all of a sudden they say, "This is crap." It's like, no, you just called my baby crap.
That's exactly right. And you have to weather that.
Yeah.
You have to weather, it throws you into shame. It throws you into a crisis.
Right.
And you're going to have to learn to weather that. One of the things about writing books, I tell people who want to be writers, is that get used to being criticized, and I will promise you that your biggest critic will be yourself.
Right.
And if you can't weather that until you get beyond it, until you stop listening to it, you'll never get past 1,000 words. Wow. Same thing with the business. And so if you eventually get past that, you work past that, you get hit a couple of times, and you stop having a thin skin about it, then you walk into that room and you talk from your heart. And when you talk from your heart, and you have to have your numbers right.
Right.
But most of the entrepreneurs I've worked with, they're brilliant about their numbers, and they're brilliant about the logistics that they're going to lay out that's going to march this thing forward.
Right.
But when they talk about it from their heart, they win.
Yeah.
They sell. Because what does that create? It creates a vibration. It's attractive.
Right. Yeah. Huh.
The heart's the best vibration of all.
Yeah. So what was the timeline between having that guy come in and say, you need to do something with this, and you making a decision, the think tank? How long did it take from that point all the way to the point where you launched the business and started to generate revenue? Well, what was the time span around that?
Well, it's one of those things that there's a joke, and it's no joke, is that I'm an overnight success, and it only took 20 years.
I know, right?
Yeah, I'm still in that process of morphing it and bringing it forward. And I
mean, it's a constant evolutionary process, but at some point you realize, hey, I'm doing this full time.
Well, that took from 2003 to 2003 years.
3 years. That's pretty good. That's actually really good. Yeah.
To get out, to get the thing developed, and then to be stepping out into the world cold, and then beginning to figure out, well, what do I do here? I had no idea what an entrepreneur was.
Right.
I thought maybe there were like 5 in the world, and they were like, there's 5.
I was one of them.
Einsteins, and I'm not one. But an entrepreneur is a person who takes who's not averse to risk.
Right.
Number one,
passionate about solving the problems.
Totally passionate about solving a problem, and doesn't quit.
Yeah.
And it's a law of the universe. The person who doesn't quit succeeds.
Yeah.
It's a law.
Yeah.
What's his name?
The person that doesn't quit and willing to get out of his or her own way.
Exactly.
I think that's the second piece of that, because if someone will never quit but always be in their own way, it's just going to stay stuck.
And there's so many ways you get in your own way.
Oh yeah.
You get in your way internally. You get in the way you relate to other people. Right. You get in the way in which you don't let go of control. You get in the way in which you stress and become afraid. Yeah. You get in your way in 10,000 different ways.
Yeah, you can get in the way trying to help you get out of your way.
Exactly. You need a guy like me to get you out of your way. And then what you need to do when you find a guy like me to get you out of your way, or a book like my book, what you have to do is you have to commit to a practice. Because getting out of your way is, you're going to bump into problems, and you as a problem, other people as a problem, your actions in the world is a problem. You're going to bump into them all the time. But if you have a center place where you retreat to, you shift out of it quickly. Right. And so what becomes what starts out a problem doesn't turn into trouble. That, like Mark Twain said, it's easier to stay out of trouble than to get out of trouble. And the way in which you stay out of trouble in your life, in your work, with your family, is through a practice in which you uphold spiritual values in your life, and that you have techniques that shift you from stress and fear to that calm, creative, optimistic attitude that opens you up to possibilities, and that you do it often. And the more you do it, the more your brain wires you for it.
Right.
Most people are wired for stress. 75% of us are wired for stress, and it's not our fault. 50% of it has to do with genetics. So, if I had a stepfather like I had and a father like I had, they were pretty stressed, which means I got their stress gene. And then the environment in that house just reinforced that. Right. And I grew up into that. My brain wired to that experience. Our brain wires to the experience we're generating. Right. You can sit and do affirmations like, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, I will be rich enough. You can do it forever. But if you don't feel it in your heart, in an experience, your brain doesn't pay attention to it.
Right. It thinks you're lying to yourself anyways. Like, get it out. Whatever.
Yeah, that's right, exactly.
It just bounces it
your
off.
brain goes, oh, there he goes again. Right. But if you create an experience where you've made that shift from contraction to expansion, and you're doing that consistently, your brain rewires for that. And what does that look like? Well, what it looks like is the parts of your brain, the middle part of your brain where the stress response system is, where the fear center, the amygdala is, it's a vast structure. That structure begins to shrink. So you're not so reactive. Right. And then the structures in the mid and the higher prefrontal cortex, they literally begin to expand. So the more fearful you are, the more the higher parts shrink and the lower parts expand. You reverse that process through a practice. Right. As you become, your experience becomes more and more expansive. And so how do you do that? You do that through mindfulness. Right. You do it as simply as, like, I teach a tool to people where, say, for example, I had this client who had the bad habit of misperceiving emails. Like somebody was attacking them and would write one back that was worse, right?
Supercharged.
And then there was no way of misinterpreting the foolishness he'd just done. It was in black and white, right? And so he couldn't stop it. His knee-jerk reaction was that fast, his wiring in his brain. Wow. So the way I got him to slow it down was when he got an email that he was perceiving as a threat, an attack, is that he was to take in a breath and then press right in here, right in between this finger and this V. It's an acupuncture point that used it's called the fire point. It's used to bring blood pressure down.
Right here?
So Yeah, right there, exactly. And you press that, and then as you're pressing it, you breathe in, and on the breathe in, you count 1, and on the exhale, while you still press it, you think of a color. Doesn't matter what color. So I'd have him breathe in, count 1, on the exhale, think red. Breathe in, count 2, on the exhale, think blue. Breathe in, count 3, on the exhale, think green. And now on the last exhale, let your mind go completely blank, just for 10 seconds. Don't think anything. Feel yourself calm down. And remind yourself that your primary goal each and every day is to be at peace, for the expansive quality of calm, creativity, and optimism that gives you. Recommit to that goal. And now look back at that email.
I have no email to look at. I'm just doing this. I'm like, I have no email to look at right now.
I don't think you fire off nasty emails anyway. But you can use this for anything.
Yeah.
You can use this for anything at all. You're stuck in a traffic jam and your mind starts to, get agitated. That's a practice. And all that practice really is about, the core to all of the practices that work in terms of the brain, is a shift from fear to peace. And the more you do it, the way you start your day is absolutely important to how your day goes and how successful your day is going to be and how successful the relationships. Business is all about relationships, how successful those relationships are going to go. All map back to whether you started your day stressfully or peacefully and sort of expansively.
Right.
And so I give people a practice. It only takes 5 minutes to make that shift.
Yeah.
And in each of the tools that I give people, there's a scientific basis to that tool. Yeah. It's not something I made up,
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that. I mean, I noticed you incorporate a lot of the spiritual practice, and you came from a traditionally very left-brained world, the medical world, the psychiatric world, and all those different things. And how important is it as an entrepreneur? Have you found that spirituality, allowing spirituality to be a part of your world, is an important part of your success in terms of creating success as an entrepreneur?
I think it's everything. I think it ultimately defines success. And, when we're using the word spirituality, what I mean is a practical spirituality. I'm not talking about joining a church, going even on meditation retreats. I'm not suggesting that to anybody.
Hiding in a cave for a month.
Or hiding in a cave for the rest of your life. Those are wonderful things.
Right.
People get a lot out of their religious inner work. But I'm talking about a practical spirituality. In other words, one that does move you from calm instead of being fearful and reactive. One that is loving and is interested in extending support as opposed to attacking somebody. One that gravitates to seeing the whole of a situation instead of the fragment that bothers them at that moment. And all of those are embedded in principles that we can all practice. Right. And so one of the things that I teach or suggest to people is to be mindful of how they measure their life.
Right.
Because if the only way you measure your life is in terms of, the car you drive, the job title you have, address where your home is located, it's not enough. It will eventually leave you empty. Right. And so it's very important that you ask yourself at the end of the day, as you pursue all the goals, all the things you had to do to achieve the goals you had to achieve for your company, you at the same time at the end of the day ask yourself, was I considerate? Did I listen when I should have listened? Was I forgiving when something went wrong? Right. Did I shift out of stress into a calmer attitude? Did I take time outs throughout the day to stop and smell the roses? Right. Did I prepare myself before I went home to be the person my family's hoping walks through the door? The calm, loving guy that walks through the door, or woman that walks through the door. Right. Kids really feel it. Yeah. Kids really feel their parents' stress. Those are important ways you need to measure your life, and they need to be added into the equation with, moving from 5 million to 10 million to 100 million.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. Now, so let's talk about where your business is right now and the kind of people that you work with. I mean, after all that entire journey we talked about, and thank you so much for sharing that, because I think there's so many layers of gemstones in there that entrepreneurs who are thinking about making that leap or have taken that leap and are just questioning their path all of a sudden because it's not as fun or as clear or as easy as I thought it was going to be. Where you are in your business right now, who is it that you specifically ideally serve? Because I know stress exists in almost everybody's world. And what's the kind of like the process that people would do when they first get in contact with you and your company, and how they get to where they have a better life, stress-free, so to speak, or being able to manage that so that they can create a better life for themselves?
Yeah, and managing it really is shifting it.
Yeah.
It's a mindset.
Right.
It's managing your mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And it's moving from a fearful mindset into a more peaceful mindset.
Right.
And it's beginning to understand that a peaceful mindset is power. It's neurological power. It's brain power. And the reason why spiritual principles are so important part of the equation is that all of the research we've seen over the last 15 years, when you get to the bottom of it, if you were asked in neuroscience, what will make my brain optimum, functioning at optimum power, right, they will tell you very simple things do it. And they all map back to some very practical spiritual principles, are at the core of the way you relate to and operate each and every day.
Right.
Not only at work, but with your family as well.
Right.
And then in terms of with yourself.
Right. So having that peaceful mind, how would that then impact someone who's listening in and they're dealing with struggles around success on all areas of life, whether it be financial, health, or relational? And how does having that peaceful mind, I mean, I know and you know, but in your own words, how would you say that would actually, how would that have an impact in making them become more successful in their life?
Well, from a neurological point of view,
right,
they are going to shift control of their brain from the lower part that makes them reactive, stressing, fearful, feeling like a victim, attacking and defending. That's that whole survival system's about. It's very aggressive,
right,
and it gets us into trouble.
Right.
And if you go to divorce court,
right,
you'll watch it.
Yeah.
You're watching that lower brain talking to each other.
Yeah. So it'll derail you in your life altogether, huh?
Altogether. And so you begin to understand that neurologically, if you take a look at the neuroscience, as you begin to make the shift out of stress, to move into being calmer as you approach a problem,
right,
to trusting in your intuition and your ability to think creatively.
Yeah.
As you begin to catch the pessimistic thoughts that are frightening you and lowering your energy and shift them in a more optimistic direction, as you begin to do that and your mood begins to improve,
right,
your emotional intelligence begins to improve,
right,
your brain function begins to improve.
Right.
And now you're smarter, you're quicker, you're more Johnny on the spot, you're making the right decisions instead of the bad decisions. All of that comes into play. And it all goes back to your mindset. And if you're not working on your mindset in the ways that we're talking about here, you're not working on your brain. And if you're not working on your brain, you're not going to be moving in the direction of success. Everything, success in life depends on our brain. Right. And everybody gets that. I know it's not too hard to figure that out, but what we don't get is our brain. What our brain depends on is our mindset. So if you want to get a powerful brain that's going to move you in a direction of a successful life at every level of life that matters to you,
right,
that you want to succeed at, being a father, mother, husband, wife, entrepreneur, whatever you want to be, the very first place you've got to start is inside. You have to make the turn inside and take a look at yourself and begin to move your mind in the direction of creating the atmosphere around you.
Right.
Will give you the brain function to succeed.
Yeah, like you're saying, your mind and your heart's got to be also into it as well, and all the different aspects, because it's all connected, right? It's all
connected.
Yeah,
it's all connected.
So,
and when we're stressed, we're all disconnected.
Yeah. Oh, it just fragments all the connections, it sounds like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so when we understand that, when we finally get that clear, that that's just not somebody talking from a church pulpit, but this is neuroscience,
right?
Then we begin to say that valuing, it's a mistake to value fear. Fear doesn't help. And a lot of people still think fear is what motivates them. You can use fear.
Right.
That's a whole other story. You can use it for, if you're going to go talk with venture capitalists,
right?
And you're afraid,
right?
There are ways in which you can take that fear and turn it into excitement and performance, and then all of those stress hormones you have will up your performance. But it's only good for a short period of time. If you stay in that state, your brain begins to wire you for all the
it's exhausting.
Exactly. Exhaustion, exactly right.
Yeah. So we all, believe it or not, we only have 5 minutes left. So I want to make sure. Wow, Rob, right?
Way to go.
I want to make sure that people who have been inspired by what you've been talking about have an easy way to connect with you. I mean, so describe to me an ideal person that should be reaching out to connect with you on some level, at least to have a conversation with you. What is that person dealing with in this moment that would prompt them to say, you know what, I need to talk to Don. I need to talk to his organization, his group, to connect with him. What are some of the most prevalent challenges that you've noticed that you've been able to kind of help people change their lives around with?
Well, if you're an individual, then you would be a person that is tired of being stressed, is tired of not sleeping well at night, is tired of going into work and feeling exhausted by 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Or by 9 a.m.
Or by 9 a.m. Who comes home and it's really hard for him to be present with the family and the family demands because they're spent by that.
Right.
And that they've come to believe that that's life. Right. There's no way out of it. And then they get the message, they listen to your show and they hear that's something you can shift.
Yeah.
And you could shift in a relatively short period of time with the right kind of help.
Right.
So they would come to me and they would come probably skeptical, but I'm willing to give you a chance. And so the very first thing I would give them is the neuroscience. So they begin to understand that I'm not just talking nonsense. And then we move into building that mindset. If it was a company, it would be a manager. It's usually C-level or senior people who are looking around and realizing that the number of stressors that his business unit is facing are not going down, they're going up.
Right.
And everybody in that business unit is stressed, and he's realizing the stress is affecting their performance.
Sure.
And then he hears that you can actually impact that situation and bring those people's stress level down, amplify not only their intelligence, their what's called fluid intelligence, but their emotional intelligence, in which they, instead of bumping into each other, they come together as a team. That you can actually do that in about 8 weeks with people. And he realizes, as a matter of survival, that he begins to do that. And so what appeals to that person is not just we have a stress problem here, is that shift that you talked about at the beginning, moving from stress to a higher level of energy, of loving your job, and out of stress into that.
Right.
He wants to do that because he knows that productivity comes out of that, and success comes out of that too.
Yeah. So you work with both individuals. Your organization work with both individuals and corporate teams.
Right.
To help them with that. And which have you found is kind of like your favorite place to be, or do you have unique favorites in both areas, in both arenas?
I love them both.
Yeah.
I love them
Very
both.
Cool. So
I love the moment when people shift.
I know it's such a cool thing, right? To be able to see that happen right in front of your eyes, and you had a hand in that to be able to basically save somebody's life on some level, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, help somebody save their own life.
Yeah.
Is really where it's at.
I love that. Empowering people, teaching them how to fish versus just here's the fish, eat, you can live now.
because you can relate to them, identify. I went through it.
Yeah.
I understand where they are. I've been there.
Yeah. So someone who's listening to this, like, gosh, I need to talk to them. What is the best way that they can connect with you? And I'll go ahead and type it into the comments, whatever it is that you tell me to put in there. What is the best way?
They can email me, and that would be Don at Pro Attitude, and it's PRO proattitude.com.
Okay.
They can call me. My office, that's 510 964 1398.
1398. Okay, cool.
Or if they want to just look around, or they can buy my book, The End of Stress, at Amazon.
Okay,
and it's
what's it called again?
It's The End of Stress.
The End of Stress. I love that.
There it is up there.
The End of Stress. Yeah, on the sign on the. For those of you who are watching the video, it's that blue book.
And that's probably the cheapest route they can go because that's only $9.
Okay. The End of Stress book on Amazon. And what's the website? It's proattitude.com?
Proattitude.com. Or they can just type in my name, donjosephgoewey.com, and go to my blog and read articles on a lot of the things we're talking about today.
Joseph. Oh yeah, I want to make sure I spell that right. .com. Okay, great. For those of you who are listening and want to check out these links, I posted it in the Spreaker comment section. So you can go to the Spreaker.com site, or you go on the app and you can go into the comment section. You can find all the different ways. You can email Don, you can call him at the office, or you can get his book on Amazon, or go to the website and do your own due diligence to find out how to connect with this amazing individual that, I mean, if you haven't already figured out how debilitating and how dangerous, what's it called? On something stress. What is it? When it's
unbridled?
Unbridled stress is in your. Yeah, I love that. That's exactly what I was looking for. You're reading my mind. Unbridled stress in your life. We all know how it constricts the blood vessels. It actually keeps oxygen from going to where it needs to go in your body, and over time, it creates problems, physical problems, dis-ease, and all those different things. So if you don't think it's a problem now, this is probably the best time before it becomes a problem, because we want to be proactive versus post-mortem, which is kind of what we're raised to believe on how we should react when it comes to helping ourselves and getting better.
And happy.
Yeah.
And living a happy life.
Living a happy life. Imagine that. If you're not living a happy life right now and you're doing all the right things and you're still not happy, maybe stress is the reason why. And I highly encourage you to reach out to Don. For those of you in California, he's in California, so basically it'd be an easy thing. Make a trip. I mean, is your life worth it? Are your loved ones worth it? Is your
and all my coaching I do on the phone, so it doesn't matter where anybody is.
Yeah. Actually. Could be all over the world, which is where most of
they come from all over the world.
Yeah, and that's amazing.
In fact, my next call is in Australia.
Yeah, that's cool because I have a few students and clients over in New Zealand.
We're in the World Wide Web.
Yeah, World Wide Web. The world is just that much smaller. I still remember when that first came out. I was like, "What is this?"
It's the truth.
All right, cool. Well, thank you so much, Don, for coming on the show, sharing your brilliance and sharing your intelligence in your journey. I love it. I have a sneaking suspicion as time goes on, we may just have you come back again, because I would love to kind of go deeper into the talk that we had earlier about the energy around money, the stresses just specifically around money, because I think there's a lot of insight that you could share to our audience about that, because that's a big thing. So,
and I want to thank you, Wei, for all that you bring to people. You're doing a tremendous service to the world and to people out there. So thank you.
Yeah, well, we're cut from the same cloth, wanting to help as many people as we can, save as many lives as we can, right? Doing what it is that we do.
I call it being as much for as many as possible.
Exactly. I love it. Okay, cool. Love that. Can't wait to meet you in person. When I go up and visit my family, I go visit you as well. Do me a favor, when we're done here, just stick around a little bit so we can debrief and talk about next steps. And then other than that, ladies and gentlemen, that's our show for this week. Again, if you found this episode to be valuable, and I don't know how you could not, and know of someone else that could benefit from what we talked about today, and if there's anybody who's stressed in life, stressed with work, stressed in life, any kind of stress level, and is debilitating them, is derailing them, absolutely share this episode with them. Review us on iTunes, Spreaker, like the episode on YouTube Live. We are now on Spotify as well, so make sure you follow us there. Did you know we even have a Facebook group called The Money Lab? So join us there to dive even deeper into bad money story elimination strategies, okay? So that's a wrap. So take this week to apply the knowledge from today. Have an amazing week. And we'll catch you next week on the Money Lab Live podcast, where we will have founder and president of Enlightened Marketing, Samantha Hartley. I can't wait to have her show. It's a long time coming. So this is Wei from the Six Figure Academy and Don Joseph Goewey signing off. All right, so YouTube land, Don and I are going to be signing off right now. Thank you guys for being here, and then we will catch you guys later.